Hi folks, with Tacitus Today. Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the media, the globalist controlled media, the depiction of the issues that are essential to their disinformation narrative. And given they rely so heavily on lies and manipulations, it's not hard to find these. In fact, if you look at the particularly the globalist controlled media, there's almost no story, unless it's utterly irrelevant to the globalist narrative. There's no story that's objective, even slightly. So now here's a sort of hit piece against deportation in the United States. So it opens up with little Juan is trembling with fear. This is the opening of the story here. He says Juan is trembling with fear, and his little daughter, little baby daughter, a picture of baby daughter in pink, dressed in pink. Little baby daughter is crying, and she is. Why is she crying? Because she's worried ICE agents may come and take her away, take her daddy away, and she is crying. Little tears fall onto the ground here as little Juanita cry, and one goes to comfort her, but he too says, "Well, Donald Trump's Nazis may come and take me away." Now, there's a probably fifth paragraph down. There's a mention that one's undocumented, but this is dismissed as just some irrelevant little administrative detail. You've got to look at the bigger picture. He's a brown guy from a poor country, and these straight white male people are trying to kick him out. So we've got a social power issue, and that is the issue here, not whether there's illegality or the legitimacy of it. Now, simply because Orange Man bad, anything that he does is not legitimate, and it's framed in that way. But every instance of how they describe, then they go on to talk about Jose is hiding, and why is he hiding? Because Nazis, fascists, swastikas. This is reminiscent of 1930s Germany with Hitler and the Nazis and the fascists and swastikas. So this is liberally sprinkled everywhere. Pretty much every paragraph has some reference to fascist or Nazi or white supremacy. What that has to do with anything, well, that's not explained, but it creates this emotive thing. There's these people trembling in fear. Then they'll talk to what they claim is a so-called undocumented immigrant advocate who says, we have never seen so much fear. The fear. This is reminiscent of Nazis and Hitler and swastika and fascist, and they'll throw all that in again. And the fear. There's just so much fear everywhere, and people are trembling in fear. And then they'll quote someone supposedly, and whether these people even exist or whether they said this is almost irrelevant, because there's not a single fact. So if you come through the whole article, media article on a prominent international media outlet, this is not, this was the sort of stuff that you would see in gossip journals years ago. Particularly the sort of trashy gossip journals you would get, on things like, say, supermarket aisles, grocery store aisles, as you're going through the checkout. These sort of gossip things, Martians have landed, man bites dog, all that sort of thing. So that was the standard. But these sort of media outlets, New York Times and so on, they used to be journals of record, and if you wanted to get sort of off the reservation, you would go to they'd always or often have a crazy editorial page where crazy folks would put their point of view, but it was listed as editorial. You knew it was just someone's hysterical point of view. But now the whole news section is covered with this same hysterical nonsense, and as you come through the article, is there a single fact that you can point to? that somebody was illegally detained, or somebody was, and so-and-so advocate says people are being just taken from the street, screaming children are being ripped from their mother's arms as the Nazis. And so very emotive language, and of course quite absurd. But did these things happen? Where did they happen? Who was grabbed off the street? And it was anybody. So that there's no attempt at factual coverage. It's all very emotional and very sort of hyper emotional and designed to create fear. But the essence of it is that these people have limited, less social power. They should, the fact that they're illegal or this or that's all irrelevant. They should be allowed to stay because, well, just because. And any attempt to remove them is illegitimate. And thus those who would want to remove these people because they're illegal aliens would want to remove them is also illegitimate. And thus, because they're illegitimate, the power is illegitimate, then no one really has to go along with it. These people have a right to hide and deceive the authorities. They have a right to false documents. They have a right to fake social security numbers. They have all these supposed rights, but no supposed obligations in return. And as you look through all of this, it's a globalist way of thinking that those who have supposedly the lesser social power don't need facts. They don't need evidence. They don't need these sorts of things. And you see this ideology, and it's ideological, no question of it. You see it saying things like, the specialist rape courts and things like that, where the burden of proof is switched to he has to prove he didn't do it, not she doesn't have to prove he did. And the cop-outs for the other side, like if she tells a lie in the rape court, that really doesn't matter because she's got less social power than him. So her telling that lie isn't a lie. It's just her fighting back against oppression of someone who has greater social power. Therefore, it's not a really irrelevant issue. So the illegal alien is just wanting a better life. So they're illegally entering the country. They're illegally acquiring documents. They're, falsely and illegally using fake documents, this sort of thing. It doesn't really matter because they're a brown person, and they have to do this to escape the oppression that they have as being a brown person. So they're not really responsible for doing that. And that's, but the people that complain about these things that they've done, the illegality of coming into the country, false documents, people who complain, they're really the problem because they have greater social power. So what we're looking at here, so they assert in the ideology, is the people with social power oppressing those who have no or less social power. That's really the issue here. And that thread of thought goes through so many things in society now that we've lost sight of just how much this ideology has permeated our legal system and permeated the whole DEI, affirmative action, employment. It's permeated every and all education. Why don't we just give this person with no social power? Why don't we just give them a PhD? Why don't we just give them 2 PhDs, 3 PhDs? I mean, what's wrong with that? Have you got a problem with that? Because if you've got a problem with that, you're a Nazi. You may even be Hitler. So this attitude, again, has been actively fostered. Now, that attitude is only taken hold in areas where the globalists are determined to force mass migration and complete societal destruction on the white societies of the world. It's only in those. So you have to view it, I think, as being part of the wider attacks from all sides, the wider effort to undermine and destroy Western society generally. So, because it creates this fantasy, ridiculous and absurd fantasy world where facts don't matter, but ideological determinations of relative social power decide all, and that creeps into things like restorative justice and so on. So in these left-wing media outlets, or globalist control, leftist probably doesn't really sufficiently describe it anymore. In these globalist control media outlets, there's a requirement that every day trot out sort of a series of hit pieces against Trump, but it's all or against any who would query the globalist project, but it's all the same. In there's been a large amount of Indigenous Australian crime in Australia, for example, but when they talk about this crime, they dismiss and pretend the crime isn't happening, and instead say if any crime is happening, then it's only in response to the oppression of the evil fascist Nazi white people. So little Babamba Bamba is a Aboriginal elder, and he remembers his mother's stories of the days when white Nazis would come and take screaming children away from their loving bosom of the mothers and of the middle class lounge room with their television, and while they were sitting down to their Sunday roast beef dinner, in would come the Nazis. They'd kick the door down, drag them away, and murder a million of them and eat the babies. And these horror stories, and this is, oh no, this is terrible. Oh, the evil things those white people. But did that actually happen? Where did it happen? What place did that happen in? So they've also got this opportunity to invent these incredible fairy tale stories and they'll open the piece, with this fairy that sets the framing. Okay, we're talking about evil fucking fascist fucking swastika waving white Nazi Hitlers everywhere, and this is the framing of the story. And we have to fight back against those Nazis, and that's what these people were doing. And look, they were crushed under boot by Nazis with swastikas. That's what. So of course none of that happened. None of it existed. None of it ever happened. But they invent this narrative. And it's very emotive, and they try and turn it into human interest. As I went through all of a large number of them, they all opened with somebody's name, and they're downtrodden, oppressed, and they're being oppressed by Nazis. And and they live in fear. They live in fear, and this is the framing that's constant. And of course, it's playing to the gallery, I guess, but the activist gallery, but. There's no attempt to stop this. And remember, all of these media outlets that are doing this, none of them are surviving commercially. None of them are turning a profit. None of them have the sufficient readership or advertising to turn a profit. And they're all running at a substantial loss. Same as the Disney propaganda movies and all this. They're all running a substantial loss. But somehow they're able to get favorable tax treatment or government handouts or money laundered into them by NGOs and so on, which keeps them going. But if they didn't have that support, then very few of these media outlets would exist, or they would exist on the far fringes, which is where they belong. But if you want to sort of castigate Trump and the team, President Trump and the team, then fine, do it with facts. I'm open to be persuaded if you've got the facts, but the point is they don't. So they have to invent this ridiculous narrative of downtrodden people living in fear. That's why and little Jose screams for his mama. That's the framing of everything. And of course, it's all a load of nonsense. You've been with Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for listening.